I watched the film last night and I absolutely loved it. Vivian, I'd love to know who or what inspired the film Scrap.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you so much.
Of course.
Gosh, so many things. I mean, I think I've always loved movies about brothers and sisters, like You Can Count on Me and The Savages and The Skeleton Twins with Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig is another great one. And yeah, so I'd always kind of wanted to do a film like that, but never really had, I think, a framework for it or a specific story in mind. And then I've lived in LA basically my entire adult life, and my neighborhood in Hollywood had changed a lot. And there were a lot more people like sleeping on the sidewalk or sleeping in their cars. And there were people who were like sleeping in their cars or RVs and then like going to work and coming back. And some of them had children with them. And so it was just like really kind of hard to see. And so then I kind of thought like, well, how does that even start? You know, like what would it take? What would have to go wrong in my life for that to be me, for me to get there? And then I realized we hadn't seen a lot of films about someone's like kind of being at the precipice of like maybe kind of at the beginning of that kind of spiral. So that was the genesis of the film. And then I thought, well, it would be really interesting if like a character was just beginning to sort of fall into that, but like was in total denial about it. And then figuring out, well, then why is she in denial? So yeah, all that was the genesis.
And I know this started off as a short film in 2018. Anthony, you actually were in it as well. Can you talk about the evolution from that short film into this full feature length?
Well, yeah, I mean, when we did the short film, it was just a really cool little project that the timing worked out to do. You know, I think we shot it in 1 day, 2 days.
I think you were there for 1 day, but I think we shot it in 3 days or maybe 4 days. I can't remember.
And then I guess it was like 2 years later, a year and a half later, that I got sent the feature script, which I didn't even know was going to be a thing. And then I was very, very relieved in a way, but also gratified and glad to see how strong the feature was and how much it had built on what was so strong about the short, which doesn't all, I think wouldn't always be the case. There would be people who would take a short and try to expand it, and then it kind of like falls apart. And it's the opposite happened here. So I was really happy that was given, that it was like a gift being given as an actor. Oh, we've expanded your role, expanded the story in this really, really good way. And then for it to actually get made, independent films are really hard to get made. And especially we filmed it during COVID, like during the second year of COVID protocols, and had all sorts of challenges in terms of just the logistics of that. And we came together and put our heads together and put our hearts together and made it.
That's great. And what initially drew you to the story of Ben?
I mean, I have siblings. I'm the youngest. I'm the youngest of three, and then my dad remarried and had two more kids, and so we have complicated and interesting relationships. I wouldn't say that my relationships are like Ben and Beth's relationship, but just anything about siblings in and of itself that just feels alive and rich. That's cool to get to explore that. I haven't really gotten to do that much of that kind of material as an actor, actually, for whatever reason. So that was one of the things. And then, yeah, just anything any material that feels truthful. And it's like shining a light on the human experience in a way that I can get behind, that interests me.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that human experience is that there's a really interesting parallel between Beth avoiding taking care of her daughter Birdie, and then Ben and Stacy so desperately wanting what Beth has. Why was it important to juxtapose those two stories together?
Well, I think as a added pressure, I think, on Beth. Like I thought, God, if she has like a child, there's like, there's a very short period of time where you could like get away with anything before the kid is going to like start to like call you out on it, and like to have a child that's kind of at that age where she's becoming like really aware of her surroundings and like what's going on and asking really hard questions. And I thought that would just be interesting to kind of put a lot of pressure on my character. And then for sure, I thought it would be a really interesting counterpoint as well to have Ben and Stacy be like, unable to conceive, and kind of Beth having had a child like by accident almost. So it feels like, yeah, it's just sort of an interesting pressure on both sides of their relationship.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And also, there's like part of the story relies so deeply on the relationships between the characters. Was there, I know guys were on a tight timeline with filming. Was there anything you guys did to connect outside of filming to create those relationships and that camaraderie and connection?
Well, when Lana was cast as Stacy, she reached out to me and asked if we could have a lunch, which, is doesn't always happen. There's a lot of times when actors just sort of like show up on set and then you like, yeah, you just go for it. I was really grateful for her to do that we had the time to get to know each other before working together. And that she showed up at that lunch with so much openness, an open heart, and a real eagerness to make a connection as human beings, before we did this work together. Like that was really, really special and rare, in my experience. And I think it really helped a lot.
It's so wonderful that she did that. And Anthony, I know you've been very open with your husband's journey to parenthood and surrogacy. And how did your own personal story help you bring Ben to life and kind of give that layered story for him?
Well, the interesting thing is that thank you for naming that. But it didn't really directly coincide with us. Like the timing was just a little off. So we had, I think, begun the journey of like looking for a match is what it's called, but we hadn't really started to try to get pregnant yet. Mm-hmm. So in a way, like getting to do Ben's story, I don't know if it prepared me exactly, but it was more like a creative, imaginative exercise than a lived experience exercise.
Sure.
So, and yeah, I'm just now in hindsight, I'm grateful for that, in a way, kind of preparing me in some ways. And thankfully our efforts to get pregnant were much less fraught than Ben and Stacy's. But, I
never thought about that, but actually, yeah, like in hindsight, because your character is the one who is like, so like baby fever, like he's thinking about it all the time. That's kind of weird. Just sort of like randomly coincided with like this time in your life,
Yeah. And, I do have a very, very, very close friend of mine. She and her husband had a harrowing IVF journey. They had literally one possibly very iffy embryo, one only, and they got pregnant, and their child is about to turn one. So
that's so wonderful.
But like these things, but there was a period during that process where they're like fully prepared not to be able to have kids. Like it wasn't going to happen. So I mean, I just think that this story being told as honestly and as authentically as it is about IVF, it's something that I don't even know how many. I don't think there have been any or many stories that really explore this very common experience. So I'm grateful that our film also talks about that for people.
Yeah, and kind of jumping off of that too, Vivian, how did you work to capture that in the script of this very nuanced and very relatable, unfortunately, story for a lot of women and men as well?
Well, I'm glad you think it's, hopefully it's authentic. I've never been through IVF. Obviously, I've never gone on that journey, but I do have had, when I wrote the script too, when I started working on it, I think I was in my early 30s. So it was a time when a lot of my female friends, we were having kind of conversations about that, about sort of making decisions about motherhood. And do we want to be mothers? Do we not want to be mothers? If we do, what does that journey look like? And, do we want to have our own children? Do we want to freeze our eggs? If we, it's just a topic of conversation that women start really having when they get into their 30s with other women. And so I've heard a wide variety of experiences. And I think, it's even women who are, young and healthy, really do struggle with fertility. And I've had, I had a dear friend of mine who actually, they went through a lot to get pregnant. I mean, they'd spend, and the money too. People don't talk about the cost, obviously. But yeah, it was, I think, just something that it felt like it would be inauthentic to not sort of presented as realistically in terms of like the emotional cost, but also
Mhm.
do it in this like melodramatic way. It's like, Ben and Stacey are both like really healthy people, right? Like they have like a lot of sorry, I don't just mean like physical health, but like they're very like emotionally healthy. They have a really healthy marriage. They communicate, they love each
Mhm.
other, and it's still hard, right? Like it's
Yeah.
still taking a toll. So that was what I really wanted to show.
That's great. And then I also love the mention of Billie Holiday, and that's kind of like the through line through the movie and the specifically her song, I Can't Get Started. So can you talk a little bit about what the importance was to adding that to the script, and if you have any story behind why Billie resonates with you?
Well, what's funny is, so my sister, I do have one sibling. My sister actually loves music from that era. Like those are her favorite, artists and singers. Like she's just like Sarah Vaughan and like all of these. She just loves it. And like, not that I don't too, but it was always so her thing. And then when I was thinking of this idea of like juxtaposing kind of Beth's version of LA that she lives in with against the reality, I thought it would be interesting to include music from that era because it's so like dreamy and aspirational and kind of putting that on top of these images of Los Angeles. As kind of a recurring theme, and then kind of bringing in at various moments when she's sort of slipping back into that, like that again, more of music from that era. But then also as an artist, like she's someone who is like the ultimate epitome of like, you know, taking all of your pain and trauma and turning it into something beautiful. Like she like
Mhm.
who has done that better, right? Making value out of your suffering and you turning it around in a way that inspires people like in a very profound way. So I think she was such a I mean, I also was like, we're never going to get this song. And so like when we actually got the clearance for the song, I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy. And then as well, the lyrics to that song are, these are people who are having trouble getting started in the next chapter of their lives.
Absolutely. And I also am very curious about the title because I feel like there's so many interpretations of what the title could be. For me, it was the idea of piecing things together or even starting over. I'm curious what the meaning of the title is for both of you.
Ellie,
Yeah,
I want to
like
hear what you think.
yeah, like a scrap is like something that can feel like tossed away or thrown away. It's also like a little bit of a fight, but
Mhm.
not like a knockdown drag out, but like a little bit of a, shoving match maybe could be a scrap, and being scrappy is like having
Mhm.
to like, make your way through difficult moments. I mean, I think all
Yeah,
that.
for sure. All of those meanings I thought were so um they just felt really right. It was one of those titles where I was like, this is definitely it. But then I was like, it's weird. I don't know. But I could never think of anything better. And it just really felt like the right word. Yeah, for all those definitions.
Definitely. And I have one more question to wrap things up with you guys. For the all these people that can relate to the story, what advice or takeaway do you hope they get from the film?
Hmm.
I mean, I guess I would just say one thing I've sort of been thinking about lately is just how precious time is, and you don't get time back with people.
Mm.
So I think seeing like, I mean, Ben and Beth arrive in a much better place in their relationship by the end. But yeah, I hope people can kind of understand like, right, these people that I love that, but maybe we sort of have a fractured or more of a distant relationship. And it's like it's worth putting in a little bit more effort and time to seeing them and repairing the relationship because you don't know when you're going to lose people.
Mm.
Bat, sure. Yes.
I love that. Well, thank you, Vivian and Anthony, so much. And I can't wait for everybody to be able to watch it tomorrow, right? December
Yeah.
Yes,
13th.
tomorrow,
That's
tomorrow.
awesome.